Hello and welcome back to Mind the Cracks. I'm your host Liam Chadwick, and joining me today is my boundary-obsessed co-host Olivia Watts.
Surprisingly, Liam, that's not the first time I've been called boundary-obsessed. If it involves a map, a fence, or a 300-year-old legal quirk, I'm there. Today we're talking about something deceptively mundane but surprisingly juicy: property boundaries, where they came from, how they've shifted over centuries, and why they still cause so much drama between neighbours. I have to say, Liam, this is one of those topics that sounds dry on paper, but the stories behind these lines on the land are anything but boring. I mean, the way boundaries have shaped the UK, socially, legally, even emotionally, it's fascinating, and it all starts with something as simple as hedges and rivers.
That's right. If you go back far enough, before all the legal paperwork and ordnance survey maps, boundaries were, well, whatever was handy. A big old hedge, a winding river, or even a particularly stubborn oak tree. I remember surveying a place out in Norfolk. Lovely old farmhouse, bit drafty, but the real star was this ancient oak. The deeds literally said, "From the old oak to the stream." And that oak, I kid you not, must have been there since the Tudors, still marking the edge of the property hundreds of years on.
I love things like that. And it's not just Norfolk, is it? Across the UK, you see these natural features, hedgerows especially, acting as the original property lines. Medieval communities would use whatever was available, and sometimes, let's be honest, they'd just ignore the boundaries altogether if it suited them. There wasn't exactly a land registry office in the 1300s.
No, and if your neighbour's sheep wandered over, well, that was just Tuesday. But it's funny, isn't it? Those old boundaries, even when they were a bit flexible, they set the stage for everything that came after. And sometimes you still find them, like that oak, quietly holding the line while the world changes around them.
It's a reminder that property isn't just about bricks and mortar. It's about the land, the history, and the stories that come with it. And sometimes those stories are literally rooted in the ground. So, moving forward a few centuries, the Enclosure Acts really changed everything. Suddenly, boundaries weren't just hedges and trees, but lines on a map, with legal weight behind them.
Yeah, the Enclosure Acts, a topic that'll get a room full of historians arguing. Basically, from the 18th century onwards, Parliament passed a whole series of acts that let landowners fence off what had been common land. It was all about efficiency, agriculture, and making sure you knew exactly what was yours. But it also meant a lot of people lost access to land they'd used for generations.
It wasn't always smooth sailing. One famous case in 19th century Yorkshire, a boundary was mismapped during enclosure, and it sparked a decades-long dispute between two families. The line on the map didn't match the line on the ground, and, well, let's just say Christmas dinners were probably a bit tense for a few generations.
Once you start putting boundaries on paper, you open the door to all sorts of arguments. Before, if you had a disagreement, you might just move the sheep. Now you're in court, waving a map and arguing over inches.
And those maps, some of them were, let's be honest, a bit dodgy. Surveying wasn't exactly an exact science back then. But the Enclosure Acts did set the stage for the modern property system. Suddenly land had to be clearly defined, and that's shaped everything from rural life to the way we buy and sell homes today.
And just like we discussed in our last episode on timber-framed homes, the way land was divided up back then still affects what you find on a survey today. You can see the old field lines, the odd angles, the little quirks that make British property so, well, British.
Absolutely. The legacy of those acts is everywhere, even if most people don't realise it. And it's why, when you're buying or selling, it pays to know your history, or at least have a good surveyor on your side.
So, fast forward to today, and with all the technology we've got, you'd think boundaries would be straightforward, but they can be more complex than ever. Sure, disputes still happen, but there's a lot more to it. People need to know where their boundaries are for all sorts of reasons, not just because the neighbour's got a tape measure. It could be selling or transferring ownership of a property, registering a new lease, splitting a title to create flats or new plots, building an extension, or even submitting a planning application where you need to prove what's yours.
And it's easy to assume it's all mapped out neatly, but that's not always the case. title plans aren't always as precise as people expect, and tech like Google Earth or drone footage can give a false sense of certainty. Sometimes it comes down to proper measurement, legal documentation, and knowing how to navigate the system. And that's where professionals come in, whether it's drawing up a land registry compliant plan or just making sure everything lines up before you submit planning. It's worth doing properly.
And it's surprising how often people run into this stuff without even realizing. They go to build a garden office or extend the kitchen, and suddenly they're knee-deep in boundary questions.
And there have been some high-profile cases recently. People spending thousands, even tens of thousands, fighting over a strip of land barely wide enough to park a bike. It's wild. But it shows how much these boundaries still matter, emotionally and financially.
Yeah, and with drones and digital mapping, I reckon we'll see even more disputes, not fewer. The tech's great, but it can also make people more territorial. But that's where having the right advice comes in. Our surveyors are often looking at boundary lines. It's a big part of what they do, especially when working on land registry compliant plans. We help customers with these for all sorts of reasons, from selling or transferring ownership, splitting titles, or assisting with planning applications.
That's where having expert support really makes a difference. These things can get complicated quickly, and most people don't deal with boundary plans or title splits every day. The team at Watson's does. We know exactly what's needed and can make the whole process a lot less stressful, whether it's for a sale, a lease, or just getting the paperwork right before you build.
All right, that's all for today's episode. Boundaries. Ancient, modern, and everything in between. Thanks for joining us, and as always, if you've got questions or stories, send them our way. Olivia, always a pleasure.
Thanks, Liam, and thanks to everyone for listening. We'll be back soon with more tales from the property world. Until next time, mind the cracks.
Take care, everyone.